Hello, and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. House Democrats hoping to vote on President Biden's larger social spending plan next week. But is that too optimistic? A nonpartisan group says it'll cost much more than the White House estimates. U.S. Navy SEALs suing the Biden administration. It's over claims they are being denied religious exemptions to the vaccine. This, while a new law in Illinois seeks to boost vaccinations by preventing employees from opting out for moral reasons. Do death row inmates have the right to hear prayers at their execution? A debate is underway in the Supreme Court after a condemned prisoner asked for prayers and physical contact with his chaplain at the moment of death. A metal foundry supervisor in Washington state pleads guilty to fraud. Her charges are tied to the manufacturing process of U.S. Navy subs, as she had been faking strength tests on steel for over 3 decades. And New York City's taxi driver union celebrates victory with lawmakers. Drivers now expect their financial burdens to ease. They were joined by Mayor Bill de Blasio and Senator Chuck Schumer. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is still optimistic they'll vote on President Biden's social spending plan next week. But it looks like it might not happen so soon. NTD's Jessica Beatty has the details.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House intends to pass President Biden's social spending bill next week.
That is our plan, to pass the bill the week of November 15th, as is indicated in our statements.
But they might have to push it back. 5 Democrats, enough to block it, are waiting for the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, to score the spending bill. They wrote to Pelosi Tuesday saying, "We cannot lend our support to advancing the Build Back Better Act until we've had a chance to review these scores, which provide the true cost of the legislation." The Congressional Budget Office warning it might not be done with a full cost estimate by next week, saying some parts will be released this week, but other estimates will take longer, particularly for provisions in some titles that interact with those in other titles. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar tweeting, "Translation, Build Back Better Act is not going to happen next week, and everyone should have seen that coming when we decoupled the bills." Although the CBO hasn't released its score yet, another nonpartisan group has. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, or CRFB, says it'll be much more expensive. So why are they so different? The CRFB says the bill relies on arbitrary expirations. That means the bill sets some programs to end in a few years, apparently lowering the price tag. But Democrats could easily reauthorize the programs later, making them permanent, something moderate Joe Manchin warned about earlier this month.
What I see are shell games, budget gimmicks that make the real cost of the so-called $1.75 trillion bill estimated to be almost twice that amount if the full time is run out, if you extended it permanently.
If the CBO's analysis aligns with this new one, some moderates like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema may vote no, forcing Democrats back to the drawing board. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
It doesn't just seem like you're paying more for everything these days. You are. New inflation data for October is out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's a doozy. Prices have climbed 6.2% over the past 12 months. That's the biggest increase since this time 31 years ago in 1990. Even if you strip away volatile food and gas prices, the price index still rose 4.6%. Don't expect things to get better anytime soon either. The overall price index rose 0.9% in October alone, more than the 0.6% economists were expecting. It all means if you don't get a more than 6% pay raise this year, you're effectively getting a pay cut. The nation's food banks are already dealing with increased demand from families that have been left hungry during the pandemic. Now they face new challenges, surging food prices, and a supply chain crisis. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
Higher costs and limited availability mean some families may get smaller servings or substitutions for staples such as peanut butter. Supply chain disruptions, lower inventory, and labor shortages have all contributed to increased costs for these food banks.
The increase in food prices is a real challenge for meeting the needs of people who are struggling to put food on the table across the country. Our food banks are seeing prices that are 2 to 3 times what they were just 9 months ago.
As holidays approach, some food banks worry they won't have enough stuffing and cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving and Christmas. In the San Francisco Bay Area, The Alameda County Community Food Bank in Oakland is now spending $1 million a month to distribute 4.5 million pounds of food. Pre-pandemic, it was spending a quarter of the money for 2.5 million pounds of food.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a sudden and intense surge in demand. Last year in 2020, we estimate that 60 million people access the charitable food system in this country.
The cost of canned green beans and peaches is up nearly 9%. Canned tuna and frozen tilapia are up more than 6%. And a case of 5-pound frozen chickens for holiday tables is up 13%. The Alameda County Community Food Bank says it is ready for Thanksgiving, with cases of canned cranberry and boxes of mashed potatoes stacked in its expanded warehouse.
The secret for us is really staying ahead of the pipeline. I used to commit to a purchase 6 weeks in advance of when it's actually needed, and now I've extended that lead time to perhaps 8 to 10 weeks.
Louis has ordered 8 truckloads of frozen 5-pound chickens, more than 60,000 birds to give away for free, and half turkeys available at cost. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The U.S. ambassador to Mexico says he has serious concerns about a bill in Mexico's Congress which would give more state power to the country's electricity.
Tenemos que ver cómo vamos a caminar, ¿no? Porque las empresas que han invertido en la energía renovable con el respaldo de los Estados Unidos han invertido más de $1 billón, ¿no? Entonces, por supuesto, están preocupados. Pero yo creo que hay posibilidades que podamos llegar a un lugar donde se pueda resolver. No estoy seguro, pero lo que sí estoy seguro es que tenemos buena relación con los dos presidentes.
Mexican lawmakers postponed the energy bill debate until next year. The bill would strengthen state control over the energy market at the expense of private companies. Salazar said the electricity proposal was being studied and that he believed a resolution could still be found. When asked if the legislation goes against Mexico's trade commitments with the U.S. and Canada, Salazar noted the enormous amount of money U.S. companies invested in Mexico's renewable energy sector. The Mexican president has favored the electricity overhaul. He argues that previous Mexican governments rigged the market in favor of private capital to the disadvantage of Mexico's state-run energy companies. The White House is preparing to host the first North American Leaders Summit in 5 years. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador will join President Biden in Washington, D.C. on November 18th. According to the White House, the leaders will discuss chartering a new path for collaboration on ending the pandemic. They will also talk about health security, climate change, equitable growth, and a regional vision for migration. Drone footage captures the migrant caravan in southern Mexico. As the caravan advances towards the U.S., Texas builds a barrier with shipping containers in hopes of stopping it. The Texas governor's office says the state began using shipping containers to block border crossers starting in October. The office says Governor Greg Abbott first directed the state to use the containers to block low-level water crossing areas. The shipping container placement is used to divert illegal aliens to areas with more Border Patrol agents and police. The governor's spokesperson says thousands of National Guardsmen and state troopers are being deployed to place the containers, as well as erect additional barriers with razor wire. The spokesperson told news outlets she would not comment on how Abbott obtained the shipping containers or how many are being deployed by state troopers. Several dozen Navy SEALs and sailors are suing the Biden administration. They claim they are not being granted religious exemptions to the vaccine that Biden mandated. Though the Navy told NTD that vaccines are in place to increase combat readiness and that religious exemption requests will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. The SEALs and sailors filed their lawsuit in a district court in Texas. The defendants are President Biden, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro. The complaint argues the service members sought a religious exemption but were denied their right to practice religion. A lawyer for the SEALs pointed out that the Navy has received religious exemption requests, but none have been approved. Mike Berry, a legal counsel for at least 40 SEALs, calls it an ideological purge, and that forcing a service member to choose between their faith and serving their nation goes against the Constitution.
When we're supposed to be leaders, right? We're supposed to be leading the way and demonstrating what it means to be a free country and what it means to have liberty, and instead we're enacting these draconian policies that are only going to weaken our military and make our nation vulnerable.
A Navy lieutenant commander told NTD Navy personnel must be up to date on required vaccinations and that religious exemption requests will be considered in line with Navy policy. This comes as a federal workers union urges Biden to extend the vaccine deadline. Currently, it's set for November 22nd, but the American Federation of Government Employees is asking it to be moved to January 4th to line up with the one for federal contractors. What's more, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a law that bars employees from opting out of the vaccine for moral reasons. Pritzker said in a statement, "Masks, vaccines, and testing requirements are life-saving measures that keep our workplaces and communities safe." The decision relates to the Healthcare Right of Conscience Act. That act was intended to allow doctors to refuse to do an abortion because of their moral or religious beliefs, but Democrat Pritzker's move ensures that act can't be used in cases where institutions force vaccines on employees. Furthermore, state and federal vaccine mandates may cause a shortage of prison staff. That's partly because prison workers are some of the most reluctant government workers to get the vaccine. For example, in New York, Illinois, and California, only around half of prison staff are fully vaccinated, and if the ones who don't comply are let go after the deadline, those spots could be hard to fill, as there have been fewer applicants during the pandemic. Staff members at schools in a Michigan township are experiencing negative reactions to COVID booster shots. Because of that, schools were closed on Monday, and not only staff, but also school children are now being vaccinated, though public health officials say vaccinating children will help end the pandemic. Here's NTD's Arian Pastar with more.
Are you scared? It's okay, I promise.
Many people believe that vaccinated individuals don't spread the virus. That's one of the main reasons why many want to vaccinate children, even though they don't usually get severely ill after contracting COVID. But a study published by medical journal The Lancet found that ongoing transmission had occurred between vaccinated individuals.
Fully vaccinated carry similar viral loads, very high viral loads of Delta, just as much as the unvaccinated.
Epidemiologist Peter McCullough says because vaccinated people also carry and spread the virus, most vaccine mandates don't make much sense. Dr. Paul Alexander is a former epidemiologist for the WHO. He says the vaccines might actually prolong the pandemic.
But you are becoming vaccinated and running around society thinking you are fine, but you don't understand. You have massive viral loads and your symptoms are low, so you're not understanding that you're sick.
Both doctors say that besides not preventing the spread of the virus, the vaccines aren't protecting people as much as they should. Because they were not created for the Delta variant, which is now the main strain.
Look at Israel. Israel is far ahead of the United States in vaccination. Their Delta curve is bigger than their pre-vaccination curve, and over 90% of Israelis in the hospital and dying are fully vaccinated, even with boosters.
He added that focusing treatment on those who have COVID is better than trying to vaccinate everyone. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And now we hear a woman's experience of navigating complex medical choices in these changing times. Much of her husband's fate, it seems, hangs in the balance, and it's not because of a changing diagnosis. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
He knew he was going to lose his job because of this.
Gina Smith is a congressional candidate in Texas and the wife of a federal law enforcement officer. Her husband served in the Marines and was injured in Iraq in 2004.
He was hit by an IED, and he's missing a kidney, a spleen, part of a pancreas, part of his leg. He's had some strokes, and you know, when he was recovering or after he got hit by the IED, he was in a coma for a little while.
After the Marines, he joined a federal law enforcement agency and has been working there for the last 10 years. He now falls under the upcoming vaccine mandate for federal workers. But with his medical conditions, he first checked with his doctor to see if he should get the vaccine.
His doctor said, "No, I don't. I think that you need to wait until there's more research because we don't know how it's going to affect some of these different areas of your body that have been affected by blast trauma.
Smith says her husband submitted his paperwork for a medical exemption over 2 months ago, but he hasn't heard anything back yet. A physician recently told Smith it takes about 6 months for medical exemptions to go through, but the deadline to be vaccinated is November 22nd.
He would lay his life down today, any given day, because that's what he believes in. He loves this country. Even if people don't agree with him, don't agree with what he's doing, he will serve and protect the homeland until his very last breath.
She recommends people to visit fedsformedfreedom.org if you want to support federal employees who do not want to lose their jobs because of health conditions or medically informed decisions. We reached out to the agency her husband works at and asked if they will allow medical exemptions for the vaccine mandate, and we haven't heard back yet. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The question remains open whether death row inmates are entitled to a spiritual advisor who can both pray aloud and make physical contact at the moment of execution. After halting a recent execution in Texas, the High Court is now weighing the religious rights of those sentenced to death.
The Supreme Court heard arguments Tuesday about a request from a death row inmate in Texas. The prisoner demands that his chaplain be allowed to pray out loud and touch him during his execution. But the court's conservative majority questioned what ruling in his favor would mean for the nation's justice system in the future.
Yeah, if we rule in your favor here, this is going to be a heavy part of our docket for years to come. How about if another state allows bread and wine in the execution room right before the execution? Does every state have to do that?
The case in question involves John Henry Ramirez, who's on death row for the killing of a Hispanic man in a 2004 robbery. His sentence was slated for September 8th. Ramirez's lawyer filed the lawsuit after Texas rejected his defense's request. Lower courts sided with Texas, accusing Ramirez of trying to delay his death sentence. But the Supreme Court halted his execution to hear the case. The inmate's attorney said he would be content to have the spiritual advisor touch his foot, citing a federal law that protects religious rights of prisoners, though justices suspected that other requests might follow.
But what's going to happen when the next prisoner says that I have a religious belief that he should touch my knee, he should hold my hand, he should put his hand over my heart? We're going to have to go through the whole human anatomy with a series of cases.
Cases from previous years have led Texas to change its policy. Starting this year, trusted spiritual advisors are allowed access to the execution chamber. But the debate over whether they can touch inmates and pray aloud remains unresolved. 2 other executions have been delayed in the state this year for the same reason.
New York City taxi drivers celebrate victory. Many drivers have faced severe financial problems because of competition with rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft, but the burden is now less.
We have seen drivers who are here with us today who are being asked to pay more than $3,800 a month.
You're not going to get rich, but you can survive. You can pay your mortgage. You can feed your children.
Chuck Schumer is being too modest, okay? I want to tell you, here's one of the most important leaders in the United States of America. The majority leader of the United States Senate. He has an entire country to think about. But when the taxi drivers needed him, he was there.
Mayor Bill de Blasio recently announced a $65 million program to aid drivers who purchased New York City taxi medallions. The medallions gave the drivers permission to operate taxis, but the growth of ride-sharing made medallions worth much less than their purchase price. The new program could result in $500 million in debt forgiveness for thousands of drivers and help them repay their medallion debt with less financial stress. New York Senator Chuck Schumer was integral in getting the deal done between the city and the taxi drivers union. Schumer's late father-in-law was a taxi driver, and he said he never forgot how hard drivers work. A 67-year-old metals scientist pleaded guilty this week. She admitted to decades of faking the results of steel tests for U.S. Navy nuclear submarines. Elaine Marie Thomas was the director of metallurgy at a Washington foundry. The casting plant supplied steel parts for Navy contractors to make submarine hulls. According to her plea agreement filed this week in a U.S. District Court, from 1985 through 2017, Thomas altered test results measuring strength and toughness for at least 240 productions of steel. That's around half of all the steel the plant made for the Navy. The tests were supposed to prove the metal would hold up in case of a collision or in wartime situations. Officials have yet to disclose which subs were affected, but noted that the Navy boosted maintenance budgets aimed at making sure the vessels remain seaworthy. Thomas now faces up to 10 years in prison and a fine of over $1 million. She'll receive her sentence in February. The Texas governor is asking education agencies in his state to take action against what he called pornographic and obscene books in schools. This comes after parents in 2 school districts complained about several books with pornographic content. NTD's Allison Lee brings us more.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott sent a letter to the Texas Education Agency, the State Board of Education, and the Texas State Library and Archives Commission Monday, asking them to set statewide standards to make sure public schools and school libraries don't contain pornography or other obscene content. The governor writes, these standards must ensure transparency about the materials being taught in the classroom and offered in school libraries. They must also ensure that our schools have an appropriate and transparent process, which includes parents and community members to vet schools and library materials before they are used. The governor first asked the Texas Association of School Boards to do the job last week, but the association refused, saying they don't have the authority to set standards. Abbott disagrees, saying the School Boards Association has attempted to wash its hands clean of the issue by abdicating any and all responsibilities in the matter. The Texas governor gives 2 examples of parents finding out about obscene content in school libraries. The Keller Independent School District recently removed a book from a school library after complaints the book contained pornographic drawings. And the Leander Independent School District recently removed several books from classrooms, including a book that describes overtly sexual acts. The governor says these materials have absolutely no place in the Texas public education system and that parents are rightfully outraged. Allison Lee, NTD News.
With tens of thousands of petitions submitted to recall San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin, the DA is now officially forced into a recall election. On Tuesday, the San Francisco Department of Elections confirmed a special election for the recall. It will be on the ballot next June statewide primary. Residents blame Boudin for the city's rise in crime. Last month, recall organizers submitted over 83,000 signatures to elections officials, surpassing the minimum 51,000 needed for a recall. Coming up, wildlife officials are reversing a Trump-era rule on habitat protections for the northern spotted owl. This species has been in decline for decades, and some officials argue it could go extinct. Billed as the world's highest external building trek, Hudson Yards City Climb lets visitors come face-to-face with New York's famous skyline. Find out more here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. This is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work.
The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow. And to thank you for all your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you get my dog beds for as low as $19.99, or for a limited time, you can get my 6-piece towel sets, regularly $109.99, now only $39.99. The lowest price ever with your promo code.
This Veterans Day marks the 100th anniversary of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, one of the nation's most treasured and sacred sites. And to commemorate the anniversary, organizers are departing from tradition by opening the tomb's plaza to the public. Here's the story.
The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Plaza in Arlington National Cemetery opened to the public on Tuesday for the first time in decades. For 2 days only, all are welcome to pay their respects and lay flowers in front of the tomb. Before now, this was an honor only reserved for presidents. But this Veterans Day is especially significant. It marks the memorial's 100th anniversary. On November 11, 1921, the remains of an unidentified World War I soldier were buried below the tomb. Over 90,000 people came to pay their respects at the Capitol Rotunda before the body was taken to Arlington National Cemetery in a grand military procession. Since then, the remains of unidentified soldiers from World War II and the Korean War have been added to the tomb. For many families, this grave is the only one they have to remember their loved ones lost at war. Over the last 100 years, the tomb has come to represent all of America's fallen heroes. Wednesday between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern is the last opportunity to see the tomb up close. Arlington National Cemetery is encouraging those wanting to come and pay their respects to register online.
Veterans Day is coming up. It's even more meaningful when it's celebrated with a birthday. A World War II veteran turned 100 years old this year. Here's NTD's Eileen Ng with more.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
World War II veteran James Bradley celebrated his 100th birthday in Orange County, Los Angeles. He received certificates of recognition and birthday cards from various leaders. He also received a flag as a token of appreciation for his service.
And all the veterans, we'd like to present this flag to you.
He is one of the few remaining World War II veterans, and on behalf of a grateful nation, the community came out today to say thank you and to say happy birthday.
Bradley served in the Normandy invasion, also known as D-Day, in 1944. As a member of the 926th Signal Battalion, he installed and repaired communication lines to ensure constant communication and the war's success. He was also responsible for overseeing communication lines to Berlin, which were often used by Presidents Roosevelt and Truman during the war.
And I mean, he's been as strong as an oak and sturdy as mahogany. And yeah, he's taught us to be honest in our life. He's honest to a fault. And I'm glad he's my father. God gave me this man. I'm thankful.
It's very important to have these celebrations. As I say, the number of World War II veterans is declining. We're working very hard to bring a cemetery in Orange County to fittingly reward their service. But in the meantime, the few that are left, we absolutely need to make sure they know that they are not forgotten, that they are very much appreciated, and we thank them for the liberty that we enjoy today.
Bradley has been honored for his excellent service numerous times. He is active in numerous conferences for veterans and teaches world history to school children in France. Eileen Ng, NTD News, California.
That's amazing.
More people than usual became naturalized United States citizens this year, with that number reaching its highest point in the past 13 years. That's according to new data from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. There were around 855,000 people naturalized in fiscal year 2021, compared with 625,400 naturalized in fiscal year 2020. There are 9 million people in the U.S. who are lawful permanent residents and who may be eligible to apply for citizenship. In July, the Biden administration said it planned to introduce an unprecedented effort to encourage those eligible immigrants to apply. The all-time record for naturalizations was in 2008, with more than 1 million people becoming U.S. citizens that year. The uptick was attributed to future fee increases and efforts to encourage eligible applicants to apply for citizenship. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is reversing a Trump-era decision dealing with a species of protected owl. Tied to the logging industry, the measure wouldn't have shrunk habitat protections for the northern spotted owl by about a third. Here are the details.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service struck down a Trump-era rule on Tuesday. It would have opened millions of acres of forest in California, Oregon, and Washington state to potential logging. Wildlife officials claim that Trump appointees relied on faulty science to justify stripping habitat protections for the northern spotted owl. The small, reclusive bird has been in decline for decades as old-growth forests disappear. Some government biologists argued the move would put the spotted owl on a path to extinction. Former Interior Secretary David Bernhardt and former Fish and Wildlife Service Director Aurelia Skipwith dismissed those concerns. Bernhardt defended how he handled the matter, saying Congress gave the Interior Secretary authority to exclude areas from protection. He pointed out that the Fish and Wildlife Service says there's reasonable certainty the owl would go extinct, but the law says that habitat need not be protected unless a species will go extinct. Bernhardt added that if wildlife officials want to change that standard, they should seek a change from Congress.
A very rare catch in Maine last weekend. It happened in Casco Bay. Lobsterman Bill Coppersmith named it Hattie after his granddaughter.
Hey guys, Mark here from Get Maine Lobster. Super duper excited to show you what is called a cotton candy lobster. It is so rare. There's only one in 100 million caught. We caught this right here in Portland, Casco Bay. Just look how beautiful that lobster is. We're not gonna sell it. We're not gonna cook it. This is a beautiful lobster and we want to preserve it.
Hattie is now at Get Maine Lobster in Portland. The organization said it's talking to area organizers and aquariums that might want to adopt it. New York has a new attraction and it's 1,300 feet above street level. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
We're coming out to 1189.
Advertised as the world's highest external building climb, City Climb at 30 Hudson Yards lets visitors come face to face with the city's famous skyline. No railings and no glass windows. Climbers are equipped with specially designed safety harnesses that let them ascend an outdoor staircase.
We're going to have those urban explorers who are really just looking for something wonderful to do in New York City. We're also then going to have those people who really want to prove to themselves that they can overcome not only their fears or their hurdles.
The first lookout is known as the cliff. Visitors can then ascend to the top platform and lean out over the edge to look down at the Empire State Building. Once the climber sets foot on the top platform, they are 1,271 feet above 10th Avenue. Climbers are then encouraged to push out over the edge and spread out their arms.
So we are at the top of the world. We are on the apex of City Climb experience here on 30 Hudson Yards, the top of 30 Hudson Yards, about 150 feet above the above edge, which is just down there. But we are on top of the apex up here.
The $185 experience starts at the edge, 30 Hudson Yards outdoor observation deck. City Climb opened November 9th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Winter is coming, and good news for fun-seeking New Yorkers. Ice rinks are back, and so is ice dancing. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
It's still almost 70 degrees in New York City, but ice skating lovers can't wait to return as outdoor ice rinks open up. Ice Theater of New York, an artistic figure skating company, is bringing lunchtime pop-up concerts to the ice rink at Bryant Park.
So it's just a very cool feeling to have all those people cheering in real life.
Many ice dancers have not been able to perform since early 2020. But this year's winter, they're back with more opportunities.
Our tour got shut down in Germany, unfortunately, during COVID.
Right now,
It's very exciting, lots of adrenaline. It's wonderful, actually. I feel like all of this energy has been balled up and really it's now able to release itself on the ice. So.
Una and Gage Brown, both under 20, have been spending dozens of hours practicing every week. Their hard work now pays off.
So while we also want to challenge our audience a little bit, make them see skating in a different way, in an artistic way, we also want to give opportunities to young, up-and-coming competitive skaters.
We want to see how much joy we bring to the ice, and hopefully that can affect them in some way to bring them joy as well. Yeah. Contagious joy.
Joyful as it is to watch, many choose to come onto the ice themselves to enjoy a taste of the upcoming winter.
Skating appeals to the Peter Pan in us. We love to glide and fly, whether it's in our dreams or in the medium of ice skating.
In addition to Bryant Park, the group is also performing at the rinks at Rockefeller Center, Brookfield Place, Riverbank State Park, and more.
So what a wonderful place to perform with such a big audience and the beautiful air of New York.
These pop-up performances will continue through this and next week at the rink at Bryant Park. And what's better, the rink will also be open for skating. Reporting in New York City, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Two U.S. senators are trying to close one of the loopholes that allows Beijing to get Americans' health data. For years, Beijing has been able to collect Americans' DNA information through both legal and illegal means. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
Two U.S. senators are pushing for a bill that will make it harder for Beijing to get its hands on Americans' personal health data. Before we get to the details of the bill, here's the important background. The Chinese regime has been collecting large sets of data on Americans, especially sensitive health data. And Beijing has been doing it through both legal and illegal means. One of the legal avenues is through buying U.S. firms that handle health data. Like in 2013, China's BGI Group bought an American genomic sequencing firm. And in 2015, another Chinese company bought U.S. firm Nextcode Health. This is one of the loopholes the new bill aims to close. Currently, a U.S. government agency called CFIUS is guarding against these foreign investment deals. If the agency suspects a deal could threaten America's national security, it can recommend that the president block the deal. Right now, if foreign companies want to buy American firms that handle personal data, they are not required to report the move to CFIUS before cutting the deal. It seeks to give CFIUS the power to make companies declare these actions before completing the transaction. Senators Marco Rubio and Raphael Warnock introduced the measure. But foreign investment isn't the only way Beijing can collect Americans' health data. The regime has also been stealing it. One of the most famous examples came in 2015 when Chinese hackers stole health data on over 70 million Americans from health insurer Anthem. The stolen data included names, health identification numbers, social security numbers, and income information. Another important piece of health data Beijing has been collecting is Americans' DNA. DNA is extremely valuable information for Beijing. That's because it provides intimate details about its owner, like whether they're inclined toward addiction or at risk of getting cancer. A U.S. intelligence report says if Beijing gains this information about an individual and can also identify the person, it'd be easier for Beijing to target him or her for manipulation or extortion. For example, data associated with an embarrassing addiction or mental illness could be leveraged for blackmail. Some individuals are also more likely to be targeted than others, like diplomats, politicians, high-ranking federal officials, or military leadership. The report also says Americans' health data may be particularly attractive to Beijing, partly because the U.S. population is more ethnically diverse. And also, unlike other nations, the U.S. has relatively loose control over its health data, so it's easier to get a hold of. Aside from theft and foreign investment, Chinese companies can also get health data through forming business partnerships. Here's how it works. American hospitals and universities are always on the lookout for low-cost genomic sequencing services. And Chinese firms can always offer competitive pricing because they are backed by government subsidies. This opens the door for Chinese firms to get American patients' health data. At least 15 Chinese firms have been able to access American patients' genetic data through providing genomic services. Back on Chinese soil, if Beijing decides it wants data from these companies, they literally cannot say no. They are required by law to comply.
Germany has sent a warship to Japan for the first time in 20 years, joining a mission to ensure safety and stability in the Indo-Pacific. It comes amid territorial disputes and a changing military balance in the region. Here's more.
The chief of the German Navy on Tuesday said the dispatch of a warship to the Indo-Pacific shows Germany's concern for peace in the region, hinting at but not naming China. He said territorial disputes and a changing military balance could cause extensive impact beyond Asia. Vice Admiral Kai Achim Schonbach told a press conference the warship will pass through the South China Sea to demonstrate its right to sail there without interference.
The South China Sea is a global common. That is a sea that belongs to everyone, so it cannot be taken possession of or claimed by anyone if we abide by the international world order.
Schonbach was in Tokyo to mark the German warship Bryant's port call in Japan. It's the first German warship to visit Japan in 20 years. Dignitaries from both countries spoke on board.
The Indo-Pacific is one of the strategically most important regions of the world. Important decisions over freedom, peace and prosperity in the world are being made here. Deploying our frigate to the Indo-Pacific makes clear that Germany stands up for our common values.
The Japanese defense minister said the frigate's visit shows Germany is determined to be involved in the peace and security in the region.
This determination will be widely acknowledged. It greatly contributes to the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific. I hope this will extend to other European countries.
One of the Bryant's key mission in the area is to monitor North Korean ships to ensure they abide by a UN Security Council resolution. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
Germany followed the U.S. and U.K. in sending warships to the Indo-Pacific. That's as the West weighs how to deal with the Chinese Communist Party's coercive military moves, which include threatening Taiwan with airplanes and building artificial islands in disputed waters. Up next, the Greek Prime Minister defends his country's immigration policy. He says blame should instead fall on those pushing desperate people in safe countries to migrate illegally. Santa kayaks Israel's Sea of Galilee, pulling a water sleigh full of toys. It's the same place Jesus is said to have walked on water 2,000 years ago. All that and more when we return.
See China before communism. Behold, a splendid culture reborn, filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Come see the performance that has touched the hearts of millions, live on stage. Coming to West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami, November 8th through January 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com/SFL.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Prime Minister of Greece is defending his country's immigration policies after a Dutch reporter confronted him and accused him of lying. He says his country has been dealing with a migration crisis of unprecedented intensity and that Greece is intercepting many people at sea coming from Turkey. Here are the details.
During a news conference Tuesday, a Dutch reporter confronted Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis over his country's immigration policies. The reporter accused the Greek Prime Minister of lying about the refugees in Greece and treating them with cruelty.
Rather than putting the blame on Greece, you should put the blame on those who have been instrumentalizing migration systematically, pushing people in desperate situation from a safe country, because I need to remind you that the people who are in Turkey are not in danger. Their life is not, their life, please, their life is not in danger, and you should put the blame on others and not on us. We have a tough but fair policy on migration.
The Dutch reporter was referring to allegations that Greece is unlawfully pushing asylum seekers back to Turkey at its land and sea borders.
We just rescued 250 people in danger of drowning south of Crete. We are doing this every single day, rescuing people at sea, while at the same time, yes, we are intercepting boats that come from Turkey, as we have the right to do in accordance with European regulation, and waiting for the Turkish Coast Guard to come and pick them up to return them to Turkey.
The Prime Minister says he will stand by his country's immigration policy and will not accept anyone pointing the finger to his government and accusing it of inhumane behavior.
Yesterday was the 32nd anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Germany is marking the event with a series of commemorations. The wall had divided East Berlin and West Berlin for 28 years, from 1961 to 1989. Let's take a look at the history of the wall.
After World War II, the Allied forces divided Germany into 4 occupation zones. But because Berlin, the capital, was in the Soviet zone, it was also divided into 4 occupation zones. The 3 zones controlled by the US, the UK, and France later became known as West Germany, and the Soviet sector became known as East Germany. With the help of the Soviet Union, the East German Communist Party established a dictatorship in 1949. In the early years of the Cold War, an estimated 3.7 to 4 million people fled from communist East Germany to free West Germany. By 1961, East Germany had lost a sixth of its population. To prevent more people from fleeing, the East German Communist Party started to build border walls around West Berlin in 1961. The Berlin Wall would become a symbol of the division between communism and the free world. East German border troops were asked to shoot people to prevent them from crossing the wall. At least 140 people were killed at the wall in the 28 years. On November 9, 1989, the East German regime announced that all East German citizens could visit West Germany and West Berlin. Crowds of East Germans crossed and climbed onto the wall. Some began to tear it down. The demolition of the wall was officially completed in November 1990. The fall of the Berlin Wall paved the way for German reunification and marked the beginning of the fall of communism in Eastern Europe.
Have you wondered how much the Mona Lisa would cost? The original painting is not for sale, but a faithful copy of it just sold for over $240,000 at an auction in Paris. This copy dates back to around 1600 and looks strikingly similar to the original. It was sold for 210,000 euros, or around $242,000 on Tuesday. French King Francois I bought the original painting from Leonardo da Vinci in 1518. You can see it in the Louvre Museum in Paris. In June, a European collector bought another 17th century copy of the Mona Lisa for 2.9 million euros. It was a record for a reproduction of the work. And as for other artworks, in 2017, auction house Christie's, New York, sold Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi for a record $450 million. Some artworks are multi-million-dollar treasures, but they rarely see the light of day. But now, the Fine Arts Fair at the Louvre is showcasing some rare artifacts and masterpieces. NTD's David Vives brings us there.
These astounding masterpieces are rarely seen by the public. Many of them spend their lives behind a lock or inside the homes of the world's wealthiest people, and they travel from one owner to another across the globe. The Fine Arts Fair at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris is one of rare occasions to see them.
Most of the exhibitors focuses on collecting art pieces from a specific period of time, so each stand has its very own display. Hello, Mr. Perrin.
Hello. Good morning.
So where does those objects come from?
They're mainly Europeans from 1650 to 1850, so it's roughly 2 centuries.
One part of the art dealer's job is to find the origin of the art pieces. Sometimes that's an impossible task.
It's a marble piece, it's a bas-relief, it's 17th century. The subject is St. Catherine that is carried by the angels to Mount Sinai. We don't know who made it, and everybody has a different idea. So you know what, we're still looking for who the maker is, but anyway, the quality is amazing.
It could also take a lifetime for art dealers to find a masterpiece.
Those pieces, it was on the market 25 years ago, and now probably the collector died, the family is selling those pieces, so now it's with me, and tomorrow, who knows, So that's the story of art.
Some artworks are not only masterpieces, but also have a great story, like this zinc mermaid. The statue stood in a fountain in Berlin, Germany. During World War II, it was shot by soldiers, and the bullet holes made by the rifles are now part of the object's history. The artifact featured in the fair can be sold to collectors for tens of thousands to millions of dollars. This is calculated according to their state of conservation, scarcity, and history. Some pieces also stand as the last physical remnants from a period of time, like this 1,000-year-old wooden bodhisattva statue. Less than 5 of these remain in the world today, according to its owner.
This is Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. She is in a position called the Royal Resting. She chose not to become a Buddha and instead to guide people to nirvana. This is from the 12th century, so there are very, very few statues like these remaining. The statue was in a temple. Monks brought it to a cave in the mountains because there was a persecution going on, and it was found there maybe centuries later.
Some of the world's top collectors were at the venue, such as John Herring, who came from New York to see the show.
And so for me, the art profession of being a dealer is not just buying and selling and things like that. Every time I come in contact with an object, it is an emotional experience.
It might be hard to decide which artifact is the best one at the fair, but Herrings has his idea. This bronze vase that was probably used by a Chinese king 3,500 to 4,000 years ago is his favorite. Collectors have until Thursday, November 11th, to make their picks. After that, the art pieces will travel to their new homes, where they likely won't be seen by the public again. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
A rare blue diamond will be on public display for the first time ever at the Museum of Natural History in Manhattan beginning today. The unique gemstone weighs over 20 carats and will be the centerpiece of an exhibit featuring diamonds from Botswana, a country in southern Africa. The gem is known not only for its size and deep blue color, but also its nearly flawless purity. The blue diamond is the largest of its kind ever found in Botswana and is on loan from the Okavango Diamond Company. The museum exhibit will have on display over 1,000 diamonds from Botswana and will also highlight the country's ethical mining program. NASA is delaying putting astronauts back on the moon until 2025 at the earliest. Administrator Bill Nelson announced the news. NASA had been aiming for 2024, a deadline set by the Trump administration, but Nelson says Congress didn't provide enough money to develop a landing system for its Artemis moon program. In addition, he says a legal challenge by Jeff Bezos' rocket company stalled work on the lunar lander. NASA is still targeting next February for the first test flight of its moon rocket, the Space Launch System with an Orion capsule. No one will be on board. Instead, astronauts will strap in for the second Artemis flight, flying beyond the moon. Nelson says the moon landing will come in 2025 or beyond. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Before you go, here's something you should know. Don't forget you can catch all of NTD's programs on television. NTD Business premieres live Mondays through Fridays at 5 p.m. We broadcast to many of your favorite platforms, Apple TV and Roku, for example. We're also rapidly growing on cable, satellite, and over-the-air all across the United States. Just go to ntd.com/TV, type in your zip code, and find all the ways you can watch NTD.